I remember when it started. The woman next door was strangled to death in her bed, with no sign of forced entry. Although her window was open, she lived on the 5th floor without a fire escape. The killer was never found, and the apartment remained vacant. Sometime after she died, I started having night terrors. I would awaken suddenly, gasping for air. One night I opened my window and stuck my head out to take some deep breaths. That's when I first noticed him. A man was standing in the window of the apartment across the street. It was the only one with the lights on, and his body was just a silhouette. I couldn't really make it out at first, but he seemed like an outstretching his arms towards the window. That night I woke up in a panic again. This time it felt like someone was choking me, but there was no one there. I assumed the incident with the woman next door was just making me paranoid. For the first time in my life, I felt a little scared to be alone. As I opened the window for fresh air, I noticed him again. Just the night before, there was one apartment across the street with the lights on. A man was standing in the window with his arms outstretched. Is that all that guy does? I muttered to myself. Maybe he's not right in the head. I had an eerie feeling that he might be looking right at me, but it was hard to say. I closed the window, pulled the shades, and went back to bed. I was getting curious about the man in the apartment across the street, so I brought some binoculars. During the day I watched his window to see if anything strange was going on. There was no activity, not even any furniture was visible from my window. He had moved out since last night? I watched until the sun went down, but no light in the apartment ever came on. That night I dreamed that there was a man in my window, like my late neighbor. I lived on the 5th floor and there was no fire escape. It was hard to see his face, but I could feel his eyes examining me. His presence was thick and suffocating, almost intoxicating so. I struggled to avoid his gaze and I ran to the window, attempting to close the shades. Before I could scream, he reached right for the glass and put his hands around my neck. I awoke terrified, convulsing. The window was open. I thought I had closed it earlier. Coughing and wheezing, I stuck my head out and took the night air in. It was unusually quiet. No cars on the road. Looking down the street, there was a long stretch of light, penetrated by a looming shadow. Reluctantly, I planned to find the source. Again, there was one apartment across the street with lights on, and a man was standing at the window with his arms outstretched. I grabbed my binoculars to get a closer look. Immediately, I was petrified. He was almost definitely staring from my window, and his arms seemed to be outstretching for me. I locked the window, pulled the shades, and hid under the blankets. Each night I became more paranoid. I stopped looking out my window and kept it locked at all times, with the shades drawn. Even so, I could feel him staring at my apartment. I thought about calling the police, but I still wasn't sure if it was all in my head. Then came that terrible night. As usual, I awoke in my hysterics. My window was still locked and the shades were up. I looked across the street and the man with his arms outstretched had his window open. This was my chance. If he could hear me, maybe I could get a response out of him. "What the hell are you looking at?" I shouted. But there was no reply. The man remained silent and motionless, his arms extended slightly beyond this open window. I thought he would at least be startled, but he showed no sign of acknowledgement. "Why do you stand there every night?" Still nothing. Just as I turned away, his light went out. I looked back to see if he was still standing there, but it was too dark. I slammed the window shut and locked it, pulled the shades, and turned on the TV. There was no way I was going back to sleep, or at least that's what I kept telling myself, until I started to pass out. I couldn't help it, so I shut off the TV and climbed into bed. Later that evening, I had another night terror, feeling like I was being strangled. The sensation didn't stop. However, this time, I was really being strangled. Two real heads were clasped around my neck, attempting to squeeze the life out of me. As I struggled to break free, I tried to get a closer look at my attacker. I followed the arms expecting to lead to a body, but they just kept going. They stretched all the way to, and though my open window. I couldn't believe it. The arms were reaching to my 5th-story window, all the way to my bed, and they were choking me. I flailed around, trying to wrestle away the freakish extremities. Kicking and scratching didn't faze them, and the grip was so tight it hurt to move. I reached out in desperation for the knob on the nightstand drawer as bristled nails dug into my skin. I managed to get it open, but trying to reach inside made the choking even more painful. Frantically, I felt around for anything sharp. I grabbed a pen and began stabbing the left arm with every ounce of strength in my body. I don't know how many times I stabbed it, but eventually it pulled back a little, removing the left hand from around my throat. I grabbed it, pulled into my mouth, bit down as hard as I could until I drew blood. The arm shook violently while trying to pull its hand away from my jaws. Choking on the blood, I unclenched my teeth. Both my arms began retreating while I spit and gagged. I stumbled upon the window, hoping to slam it down on them, but just grazed at the fingertips. As I watched in horror, the arms, which stretched all the way across the street, retracted back to the source. My heart stopped when I saw who they were attached to. They were his arms. I couldn't look away as the hideous limbs wobbled and whipped, returning to their normal length. He put them down his sides, and the lights went out. This time I didn't just lock the window. I moved a bookcase in front of it. I sat on my floor shaking, trying to get my thoughts together. What was I going to tell the police? A man reached down to my window from across the street and tried to strangle me? They surely think it was a prank call, but I needed someone to check out the apartment or I will never be able to sleep again. I decided to make a quick anonymous call about domestic disturbance. Eventually 2 officers pulled up the building across the street and they went inside. A light soon came on the window. I waited for something to happen, hoping I didn't send 2 unwary men to their deaths. After mere minutes, the lights went out, and the officers returned to their vehicle. Their voices managed to carry up to my window, and I heard them say I was hoping they wouldn't. Nobody lived there. A few weeks later, I saw a moving van outside the building. Someone was moving into that apartment. I was relieved for my night terrors had already stopped. One night I couldn't sleep, so I turned on the light and looked outside. I noticed someone across the street looking out their window. For some reason, I felt compelled to reach them. I'm still trying.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video. And I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.